Greeting, Earthlings. We have now taken over your radio.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the March, what day is it? March 7th edition of the Fray, a roundtable discussion featuring a rotating cast of characters and repeat faces. My name is Derry. With us tonight, introducing first, twitter.com/Gutex, Ryan Gutex Gutierrez. How are you? Gutex, are you there?
Oh, sorry, I have my mic muted. I'm here. Thank you for having me back.
No worries.
Sorry, I'm like super quick on the draw today.
The first of our special guests for the night, our first time on the Fray. You know him as one half of the commentary duo that handles a lot of the duties for Level Up Live. They do a lot of the commentating down in Southern California. You've heard his vocal talents doing tournaments like Final Round and Evolution. Twitter.com/UltraDavid, David Ultra David Graham. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on?
And our other special guest for tonight, the other half of that broadcast duo that handles most of the business down in Southern California. You've heard him in a lot of the same tournaments. James Chen, twitter.com/JChensor. How you doing tonight?
How's everybody going?
How's everybody going? And last but not least, my broadcast partner, twitter.com/Magus1234. It is Magus1234. How are you?
Hanging in there, baby. How you doing?
I'm all right. So tonight, we've got James, we've got David, and everyone on this call tonight, everybody on the panel tonight, has been involved with broadcasting for a number of years now. You've heard one or all of these voices at some major that you've watched. So tonight we're going to talk about fighting game commentary, and it's a pretty good panel to do it with. It's something that a lot of people think is critical to streams. It's something that a lot of people think really doesn't matter, and people kind of blow it out of proportion. But it's definitely something that doesn't really get talked about from this perspective too often. It's something that gets discussed by stream chat and people on forums, but you don't really have the opportunity to hear it directly from a panel of experienced commentators like this. So I'm going to go directly to David first with a question following up on what I had just said. David, just real quick, do you honestly, how critical do you believe commentary is for a stream?
It depends on who the audience is. For people who know fighting games, it's not very critical. I think that we're just kind of the window dressing, where we can add stuff. We can make it a little bit more exciting, or we can make it a little bit more informative, or we can make it suck. But it's not super important. But if it's a bigger audience and people might be people who are watching might not know stuff, then it can be really important. I mean, I've talked with people at events that are not fighting game events that mention that they would have a real tough time following a lot of stuff if it weren't for people who were telling them a lot of info. It seems like what they care about most is the info, not so much the entertainment side of it, which I think makes sense because when I watch games that I don't know about, that's what I care about. I'm not in there for the entertainment. I want to know like what some champion's move does in LoL because I don't know anything. So like, please tell me. Other than that, when it comes to like the actual fighting game community, yeah, I think we're kind of important, not a super big thing.
James, do you kind of agree with David there that for established streams, for established viewership, that fighting game commentators are more icing rather than cake?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I always see it is, there's definitely a lot of different kind of commentators. There's like the knowledge commentators, and then there's, the entertainment guys such as Yipes and such. I think for streams that have more, like, if the audience is more already well-versed with the game, then guys like Yipes and Chris Matrix and, the guys who can provide the humor in the stream definitely enhance it a lot because then you've got basically the game, which is entertaining, and then you also got the commentators who are entertaining as well. So I don't know. The interesting thing about it these days is like when you watch fighting games these days and there's no commentary, it almost seems kind of quiet now. It's almost like we've all grown accustomed to it. So at first, when commentary started, I totally agree with David, and I just don't think it was necessary. You know, it was just an extra thing. But I think the more we're getting used to it, the more no commentary is actually starting to seem weird to me. I don't know if it's just me, but like if I watch match videos on YouTube and there's no commentary, sometimes it's just kind of weird.
No, I agree. I agree totally. Magus, it seems to me, and by the way, my opinion is more in line with what David and James are saying, that it's probably in a format that's tailored towards experienced viewers, it's probably a little less cake and a little bit more icing. But if you talk to stream monsters, if you talk to guys who watch these streams like loyally and they're there every week and they really make a point to try and be home to watch these things, you ask them about commentary, they are 100% cake. That's their opinion on these. Do you think maybe there's a separation between the views of guys like us who are doing this and guys who are at home consuming this, where they say like, well, I think that commentary is the most important part for me?
No, because I agree with the viewers. I find it funny how you throw around stream monsters so casually too. But because I think the commentators are the ones creating the content. They're the ones telling the story. And if you're having a stream and you are kind of producing something, you're giving people something to watch, you know, you should be telling a story. You should be doing something. Otherwise, you could just record the videos, upload them to YouTube, and that's fine. So I think they are, you know, just, it's like a 50-50 deal. Like, you need the matches and you need the commentators, but the commentators are actively working and having to process information to create the content. So I think, you know, they're extremely critical and important to the role of having viewers and people kind of, you know, following and wanting to watch more. And I think, you know, that's something probably Ryan could talk about more, is like the content creation side of commentators and what role they actually play.
Ryan, do you find yourself leaning at all towards the informative style of commentary versus the entertainment side? Because I'm not meaning to really reinforce any stereotype here, but, you know, it is kind of, you know, the unofficial style of the West Coast to be a little bit more play-by-play, and the unofficial style of the East Coast to be a little bit more hype-centered and entertainment-centered. What do you feel like is a healthy balance between those two? Do you feel like there's a necessity for that Team Rush Hour style, like telling jokes and being in there and being funny alongside all this information?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need kind of a balance. You need a guy to do play-by-play, and then you need more of a color commentator. And just to also kind of agree with Magus, like, telling the story for the viewer is really important, because otherwise it's just dudes playing video games. Like, who cares? You know, like, even if you have experience playing the games, it means more when you understand the history between two players. So when I'm doing commentary, I try to focus on, well, what happened last time these guys played? You know, what is their history? Did this dude like piece him out at Evo, or like stop his team from going to SBO or something? Those are the things I think that get people really engaged, because for the most part, I think the vast majority of the people watching aren't like super experts at the game, because if they were experts, they'd be at the tournament in the top 8. You know, so you have to kind of think, well, what will get people to care about this match? And I find that that's the history or some sort of interesting fact about the players.
David, Gutex is the first guy to throw it out there, that phrase, color commentator and play-by-play. How important is it to you, and how important do you think it is to the quality of a stream to have that traditional broadcast dynamic of the color commentator and the play-by-play guy in the booth for a fighting game stream?
I'm not terribly interested in that kind of broadcasting. I think that a major reason why that was even a thing on television was just a huge underestimation of how much people knew and what they wanted to hear. And I think that I don't really want to do that same thing for video game streams, where you know, I know that the people watching are a little bit more niche and are more likely to know stuff, even if they don't know the game very well. So what I would prefer, what I like the best, is when I commentate with somebody who can do both the the play-by-play and also the color, and kind of interweave both. I think I think that's the most enjoyable for me to do, and also to listen to. Like I'm not. I think it sucks when it's just like kind of rote information, and it's also pretty boring when it's just some phrase or whatever. Even if you have both of those people sitting next to each other, one guy is speaking some info and then the next one doing some color. I feel like that is kind of lacking. I'd rather have both people have the ability to do both.
James, we have a panel of guys tonight that are veterans of doing this sort of thing. I think most of us have at least 4 or 5 years doing this, and so you have a group of guys that have honed their craft over a long period. Well, to kind of change gears here, if there's anybody listening tonight that or listening via YouTube that wants to maybe get into this, why don't you tell us a little bit about the process, how it started for you, and some of the things that you did early on to try and get better down the road?
Well, I mean, a lot of it, I mean, I know David talks about this a lot. I mean, a lot of it honestly was just kind of a right place at the right time kind of situation. Because we were going to Wednesday night fights a lot, and that's when AJ was just like, you know what, I'm going to start streaming. And then I remember the first day he got the streaming up, you know, he was just like, is there anyone who wants to do commentary? Is there anyone who wants to do commentary? And at the time, there was a few streams out there, and I was not a fan of the general trend of commentary in fighting games at the time. So I was just like, I'm always the kind of person that if I'm going to complain about something, you know, I always want to try it. I always want to, you know, actually see if I can do it myself to actually justify my complaints. So when AJ asked for commentators, I was like, you know what, I'm going to jump in here and just see exactly how hard it is. And it's, God, I mean, you think it's just like you just get on the stream and just, you know, talk about games like normal, but it's actually a lot harder than people think. And one of the favorite things that, oh, not favorite things, but one of the interesting things you can do is go look up one of the match videos from Project Blocks, a tournament that the Level Up team ran a long time ago. This was still in vanilla Street Fighter 4. Me and David did commentary for that, and if you like watch the top 8 and such, you know, we're not even saying anything for like half the time. You know, it took a long time to even get to the point that we're at. And, you know, it really does take a lot of experience and a lot of practice to get good at it. And really, honestly, a lot of it is filling in, you know, I don't want to call it boring periods of time, but, you know, everyone can get hype whenever Combo Fiend lands a bionic arm and stuff like that, but really it's honestly the situations where not much is happening. That's like the hardest part of doing commentary, and I feel like that's where a lot of the skill comes from, is being able to fill in that kind of section. So I mean, a good example of that is like when me and David were doing the Los Angeles Grand Finals between Snake Eyes and Justin. You know, everybody that was in the room who couldn't hear the commentary was pretty much just getting kind of bored because the match was lasting so long. But I had a lot of people tell me that they were watching on stream that me and David did a really good job explaining things and keeping it exciting despite how long that match took.
Magus, speaking of guys that have transformed over time and start out maybe a little lackluster, no offense.
None taken.
Why don't you, same question to you. Guys who are trying to get started doing this, places that they can go to start out, things that they could do to get better?
I don't know. I got asked that question a couple times from just people curious about commentating. And they're like, how do I get started? What should I do? I mean, I don't know, because like James alluded to, we kind of were in like a certain place in a certain time. Like, you know, we were doing stuff with I Play Winner and with Albert and Haunts and Keystone, and it kind of just gave us a spot to sit on a mic and talk. And you know, we didn't really have any aspirations to be commentators or anything like that. We were just passing time. But as the events got bigger and, you know, nobody really knew how to talk on a mic, you just kind of use the experience you have bullshitting on a mic for so long. And then after a while, you know, after the years passed, And I always loved Street Fighter. It was really like the reason I was there in the first place. Is I always loved it. I always took it seriously, and I have been for the past 15 plus years. So, over time, it was more like me watching other streams and other commentators and kind of being like, man, it really annoys me that they're not taking it seriously and they're just kind of making it a joke. And they're using the time on the mic to basically shit out their favorite jokes or one-liners, and then that's it. And you feel like you don't learn anything about the game. So I kind of really took the time, I would say, after the first couple of years of just getting wasted and getting on a mic and having fun. I kind of took the time to really know the technical side of games and try hard to portray that to the audience in the simplest terms. So. But as far as starting, I mean, I don't know, man. Find your locals, upload YouTube videos, voice over them. Just get your name out there. If you're at a major, try to vulture your way on a mic. Like that's that's about it.
For reals. Gutex, I'm going to start with you on this round of questions. I want to ask you just a really broad, basic question. Favorite commentator?
Well, that's a great question. I think that my favorite commentator of all time is Rockefeller.
I was about to say Dr. Sub-Zero.
Yeah, Dr. Sub-Zero. I mean, I was lucky enough to be a part of the Third Strike ranking battles over at Family Fun Arcade, and it was like Arlith or Shogo were like, hey, we should start recording these. Oh, we need somebody to do commentary because that was the standard in Japan. And John just was amazing at it, and I think really kind of... You don't even really see that style anymore. I mean, James and David and Magus, you guys are super pro, keeping everything, super classy, most of the time, right? But John is just the polar opposite, and just it's he's part, it's almost like part improv, part play by play on the game, But I actually like to see that more. But that's just me. You really need both.
Well, I think
that commentary style is so dated. I feel like, no, not to rag on Sub-Zero or anybody, and even because that's what me and Derry used to do. But it's just when you hear people now just getting really grimy and stuff like that, you're like, man, there's a place and a time. And nowadays, it's just not the place or the time.
Well, yeah, it depends. It depends on the situation. For example, at Evo, you wouldn't necessarily want that. But I mean, if you're kicking back with some friends, at your house or something, or it's a late night stream. I'm not talking big major events. I'm talking more sort of smaller streams.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like there are commentators who are. Player favorites, or guys, guys from the scene that, I'll just say my favorite commentator is Eris.
Eris is really good.
Yeah, I love Eris, but is that a guy that you would expect to see commentating Street Fighter and Major League Gaming? No, of course not.
Exactly.
But that's
there's
my
a time
favorite.
and a place. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I think there's obviously a difference between, but I do have to agree somewhat with Magus that. It's I think that's a more dated style, and that the guys who are more successful now are the guys who are integrating a little bit more professionalism into the process, still being entertaining.
Right. So how you really enjoy Eris, I would say I really enjoy somebody like Ryan Hunter, and I feel like you could throw him on the mic with anybody and he'll fit because he's doing the game justice. So
right. Ultra David, favorite commentator?
Me.
Oh, get out of here!
That was not a joke.
I know it wasn't. That's what I'm saying.
Why can't I be my favorite?
You can be your favorite. You're gonna go on record saying that.
James, please save us and tell us your favorite commentator.
Well, my favorite commentator is obviously David, right? I mean,
why don't we all just say that David's our favorite commentator?
No, honestly, I mean, David is always, of course, one of the best. Magus, I really enjoy your commentary as well. Eris, like you said, is just one of the funniest people ever. Every time he does commentary, it's just like I mean, he's definitely more of the Sub-Zero type of commentary. And then, of course, I have to give a shout out to Yipes. I mean, Yipes is the man, pretty much.
Of course,
So
yeah, Yipes is
Yeah.
the man.
Yeah, if I'm gonna pick somebody other than me, I guess I would say Andrew is my favorite.
Oh, you're so nice, David.
Yeah. Well, it's because I think that he's similar to me.
You know what's
Like
funny
the
is
slightly
that
darker version of you.
I think that as well.
Pretty much.
I've said that in the past, and people have been like, "No, it's." And I think you guys are a lot more alike than people realize, and I think it's maybe obscured by the fact that you had Magus for years just being drunk all the time, but see, there's a secondary question I was going to follow in, and this is actually a good point to bring it up. Do you think that the commentary? Because I'm going to say, outside of Eris, that not to sound too Turk and JD from Scrubs, but Magus is one of my favorite commentators as well. Do you feel like a lot of the duos that work really well work as well as they do? I'll start with Gutex here. Do you feel like these duos work really well because the commentators who are working together honestly enjoy each other as far as work goes, and they like to work with each other, and they really feel like, this guy I'm working with right now is good,
Yeah, it's super important. Like both James and David, you guys have been working together for so long. It's like you get like a rhythm with the person, and you kind of set into a groove with them, and then you can definitely see the difference if you have to do commentary with somebody that you don't know very well. Like James actually is my favorite to do commentary with, because I know that even that he can make up for my shortcomings. But then if I have to work with somebody that I don't like, let's say I'm in a foreign area, or I'm at some tournament, and they put you on with somebody that you don't really know, then it's like he's talking over you, and you're trying to get in a word edgewise. It can definitely be a mess. So having a commentary partner that you work with regularly, I think, is really important.
Magus, there's obviously James and David, but do you feel like there are any other duos anywhere else out there that are kind of, like a cohesive duo unit that really works on that level?
I really enjoy Aquasilk and Krisu when they're vibing.
Yes.
I think part of the issue with them though is they have to stay on a mic for hours, and it gets hard to do anything that long, and especially their type of commentating, it makes it more difficult as time goes on. But they know a lot about the game, and I feel like they could do non-fighting game related stuff and still be successful with it. So I really enjoy listening to them. But I don't know. I just think there's some people that universally work well with anybody, and then there's some people that are just overwhelming personalities, or they don't talk too much, that don't work well with people. So I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard to find rhythm with another commentator, and I think that's why so many people like James and David. Because they're just they're so good on the mic together, and it's so easy, and they're easy to work with. I know whenever I have to sit down, and it's they're like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna be working with James, or you're gonna be working with David." I'm like, "Oh yes,"
Yeah,
because it's so
exactly.
relieving. Because I know,
Yeah.
I know whenever I'm short for words, or if I miss something, they'll compensate for it, and they'll pick up the slack. So it's harder to work with the people maybe that the general stream monsters might kind of get hyped for and laugh at their jokes. Those people are hard to work with, because it's you try to be yourself, or you try to do one style, but they tend to be really overwhelming. So it's hard to kind of for me to work with people with really big personalities.
Man, I totally agree. When I'm going to be commentating with Yipes, it's a little intimidating, because
It is. It's very intimidating.
I know I'm not going to try to do the same stuff as Yipes does, because I can't. That's fine, but trying to find the places when he's going to do it to let him do it can be hard. You know what I mean? Because I know that he wants to
I do have to note
wants to get out there.
Yeah, thanks, David, because I completely agree, and that's basically what I wanted to say. But I do have to note about Skis. I worked with him on Evo, and he was really easy to work with as well, and he reminded me a lot of whenever I do work with James and David. So I just want
Yeah.
to put that out there. Shout outs to him. He's one of my favorite commentators.
Shout
too.
outs to Ski
Yeah,
Sonic.
Ski's
He takes a
awesome.
lot of abuse from
He
stream
does.
monsters.
I've seen
Yeah,
that
why
guy
does-
sit on a mic for like 14 hours, hard body. So he's a hardworking dude. So
Dude, the worst thing about it too is I just feel like, I mean, you know how the fighting game community works. It's just about like memes and kind of trends. I don't even think half the people who say negative things about Ski Sonic even really think he's bad. Like I just feel like they're just going along with everybody.
Well, yeah,
now.
they don't want to be the one guy in the chat that's like, I think Ski's great. Like, you know, like they don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
Even though there's probably more than a few of them that do feel like he's. I mean, like, because his style may not be for everybody, but he is a really insightful guy. He knows a lot about the games. Every game I've ever heard him commentate, he sounded like he knew what he was talking about, and he has an excitement that's really contagious that I really enjoy listening to personally. I can see where other people may not like him, but I definitely don't understand the abuse. Although there is an element to being a commentator where you're just kind of a target for abuse. You're kind
That's
of
right.
almost you're a bullseye almost for the player. Like the players don't get anywhere near as much abuse as the commentators do.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things I've always said to people is that, you know, people ask me what do I expect to try to be a commentator. First thing I always like to tell them is that, you know, just make sure you have a thick skin because you are going to get shit on more than you've ever been shit on in your entire life.
James,
yeah.
what's the worst thing anybody
It's a
ever said
zoo.
about you on the internet?
There was, I always tell the story that there was a thread, like I did a podcast and it was about like esports and stuff like that. But at the time it was like a super touchy subject. So the headline that they posted on SRK was like, James Chen talks about the state of commentary because I talked about it for about like 5 minutes in an hour podcast, right? But they used that as the subject. And so the SRK thread after the article was just one big giant string of insults and hatred directed towards me. And so it wasn't ever like one thing. It was like this giant concentrated thread of just like complete, absolute, you know, just like visceral
there.
kind of comments. And it was painful to read. I'm not going to lie. But, you know, it's one of those things. I mean, the one thing that I've learned about that was I posted in that thread eventually. And some of the people who are the most, you know, who posted some of the most mean comments were like, oh, I'm sorry, man. My bad. I didn't mean it that way. You know, what we're trying to do is, you know, trying to improve and whatever like that. And, you know, I thought about it and it's just commentators are put in a position that, let's face it, everybody likes to insult, like I don't want to call us famous, but, you know, known people. Like how many times have we've been like watching sports, like, you know, I'll just be sitting there going like, you know what, like, oh my God, I hate this coach. I hope he dies in a fire. Like he's the worst coach ever. Oh my God, I can't stand him. And the last time I did that, I just took a step back and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what people are doing when they're insulting the commentators, you know, we're there. And so we're basically putting ourselves out there to be insulted. So I'm trying not to take it as seriously, but that's why you have to have the thick skin in order to do this.
Absolutely.
Going back to Rush Hour, I just want to say for the record, my favorite commentary bit of all time, and probably my favorite commentary bit until the day I die, is Chris Hu explaining the DHC glitch to Aquasome.
Yes.
I swear to God, dude, I cannot listen to that and not laugh for like 5 minutes. Magus, do you have a favorite bit from any stream that you've watched?
Oh man, you know, I'm sure I do, but I can't think of any right now. I mean, there's just, you know, the East Coast has like a lot of funny commentators, so they have a lot of big personalities over there. It's very different style than over here in the West Coast. But I mean, you basically nailed it. Like that was one of the funniest. You know, one of the
That was
funniest.
so well done. Like
Yeah.
it sounds like they practiced it for like a week before it happened. It was so like crazy.
Yeah, I gotta give a shout outs to Art because I really like it when Art sits down too because he has like all these really funny stories. Like he just knows so much about the fighting game scene. It's crazy. You know, almost to rival like James Chen's knowledge, like in historical knowledge. And he just has like a really funny way of talking and kind of like, you know, getting things out there. And when he starts doing the Oz and shit like that with Adnan, like that shit always kills me. So shout outs to Art.
Yeah, actually, if I can, you know, we talked about duos and, you know, we talked about how hard it is to work with Yipes. But sometimes. I mean, it's not hard to work, not that hard to work. I don't want to make it sound like it's, oh my God, Yipes is so hard to work with. But, like you said, he is a big personality. But I also just really need to give a shout out to Chris Matrix, because we were talking about duos, and Yipes and Chris Matrix, I think, are like probably the most entertaining duo that there is, like in terms of just like pure fun and just hype and excitement. So
Yeah. You know what? One of the funniest I could think of in recent history, I want to say it was SBO calls, but I can't really remember. It was Fnatic when he got on the mic and he was talking so much shit about Infrit, and then he had to play him like twice in the tournament and got bopped. And like it was just the funniest thing to me. Like because like I was getting picked up by some people, and I was like, I cannot miss this. So we hooked up the phone and the stream to the car, and we were just like, we were listening to it the whole car ride, and I'm like, yo, Fnatic is going off, and then he ended up getting bopped, and it was just like, it was so hilarious to me. But like, Fnatic he hung in there like a soldier. So that was just too good to me.
David, let me get your thoughts on your favorite match to have commentated.
That's
a hard
good question. I have a really bad memory. I really do, and it's really hard for me to like come up with stuff like this on the spot.
What about Bionic Arm at final round?
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, that was really good. Actually, Noel's a really good commentator. I wish that he wasn't always a top 8 player so he could commentate more.
Yeah, well, I wish he'd suck a little bit.
Yeah, no, for real. No. Yeah, that was up there. Probably something from Evo, like maybe something from. Actually, no. You know what it was? It was the Super Turbo Tournament of Legends when it was Kusumondo with E Honda against Mao with Claw, and it was like 2 a.m. And Kusumondo was like showing me stuff that I had never thought about in the 12 years that I've played Honda at a competitive level. That was awesome. Like I don't think I've ever been so excited to commentate that late, because it was just we have done some more Street Fighter 2 since then because of the Street Fighter 25th anniversary thing had ST in there, but that was the first time that we had done ST commentary in a long time. So it was like really unusual, and I felt like really lucky to do it. And it was two of the best players in the world and 2 of my favorite players in the world. Yeah, that's probably it.
And you know how much me and David love Super Turbo, so the fact that we got to do the commentary and just basically we're just like, it's almost like kids in a candy store when we were doing the commentary for that. We were just so excited just to be able to do that game.
It's definitely obvious when the commentators like a game versus when they don't.
Yeah, that is very true.
Gutex, have you ever? Do you have any matches that come to mind when I ask you? Not necessarily your favorite match to watch, but your favorite match with commentary, as in the commentary really made the match for you.
Oh, I don't know, man. Like most of the best matches that I've seen are where I'm like there.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, because I don't really spend a whole lot of time because I'm usually there. Yeah.
Just say Bionic Arm then.
Bionic Arm. Well, yeah, actually, that was one where I wasn't there. No, I actually wasn't there for that one. So yeah, that one actually was amazing. I used that clip for a video not too long ago. So that was like fresh in my mind. I can see David's face and his arms up in the air, like in my mind. So that's definitely probably one of my favorite moments.
Magus, your favorite match to call?
I don't know. I mean, doing Filipino Champs Grand Finals was really amazing. My voice was gone. I was probably like the worst job I've ever done commentating, but it was just like, it was so much fun. But I also, Derry, like, in recent history, I got to say, and doing Street Fighter pools or semi-quals with you at NCR was really dope because we hadn't commentated together in a long time. And I felt we did an awesome job. Like, I don't care what people think. We had a lot of fun, and I feel like we nailed it.
That's actually one of my favorite stretches of commentary I've ever done. So I thought we did really well too. Actually, going back to something you guys were talking about earlier about big personalities and having good commentators to work with and just like not being able to really do well. I did Marvel Top 8 with Spooky that weekend, and it was fucking terrible. And and I was the reason. And what was funny was I was so
Wow.
excited going into this, and I was really looking forward to it. And they told me I was going to be They told me I was going to be doing top 8 Marvel, and Marvel's my favorite game to commentate. It's my favorite game to watch. And they told me I was going to be working with Spooky, and in my head I was like, this is the recipe for an amazing top 8. And then Spooky did great, but I just could not figure out how to work with him. It was on me, and I did a shit job, and it's very obvious if you go back and watch it that it's just bad. So I didn't want to interrupt you guys earlier when you were talking about Yipes, but yeah, I mean, I've been there before as well.
Spooky is also super underrated as a commentator as well.
Oh, for sure. That guy is like an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
David, speaking of underrated, I'm going to go back to you. Underrated commentators.
I really like Ryan Hunter. He's a really smart guy. It's really cool to do it with him because he not only has a lot of game knowledge, but he's also very creative and like quickly creative. Like he'll quickly like come up with a solution to whatever we had just seen if we're confused, which I think is really cool. I like that a lot. I guess I just feel like commentary. I have a low bar for appreciating commentary. Like I said at the start, when it comes to fighting game stuff, I don't really need commentary. It's like window dressing for me. It's just it doesn't matter that much. It can slightly increase or slightly decrease my enjoyment of it. So, like I personally feel like maybe not most, but there are lots of people who commentate who are, probably better than I was at the start, who get crap because they haven't had the hundreds of hours of practice. But even in spite of that, I still think that they're pretty good. I don't know if I can name them because it seems like whenever I turn on some stream from some random part of the world, there's somebody pretty decent doing it.
Gutex, how do you think that the guys like that are on this call tonight, or some of the guys that are from the East Coast, there's definitely commentators on the West Coast that are not with us tonight that I would put in the upper tier. But how do you feel the guys from the fighting game commentary upper tier stack up against, say, guys like Tasteless and Artosis and the StarCraft casters and the up-and-coming League of Legends casters?
Oh man, totally right up there. I watch, every now and then I'll see a StarCraft stream, and if Tasteless and Artosis are doing it, it really helps me understand the game better. And when I watch something like Marvel and I watch you guys do it, and I'm listening to you guys, I don't play Marvel, so I definitely, I feel like I get that same level of enjoyment or understanding of the game from you guys as I do from like the StarCraft guys.
David, I know you've gone on record, and I just saw you in chat actually, as saying that you kind of feel like league commentary specifically has a long way to go, especially for considering the position that they're in as far as the exposure they have. That the quality of the commentary they have is not necessarily on par with, the echelon that they're living in right now. What do you think that League of Legends could take from the fighting game community to get better?
Well, I think the best thing that they can take from the fighting game community is something that they can't take, and that's just the excitement and the hype of it. From what I've heard from people who are commentators for League of Legends, they're specifically asked by Riot to not get too crazy. It's just kind of like a marketing decision on Riot's part to do that. They want the game to appear more casual friendly and more kind of sportsy, and so like the stuff that I think that they should pick up is stuff that they're just not allowed to. But even on top of that, I'm consistently surprised by commentary in League. I feel like they have a difficult time explaining things quickly. They have a difficult time getting the viewers into what's going on. In some cases, I think that there are League commentators who work more to take you out of the game. I mean, that's how I feel with some of them. Even though I don't know League very much and would very much like to listen to the commentary just to learn it, there are some people who, when they're on, I have to mute it in order to watch because I just think that it's too frustrating to listen to. And considering the amount of money behind that thing and the amount of people playing it, it kind of baffles me that they haven't gotten better or that they haven't found better people.
Don't you think that it's just because maybe they haven't been doing it as long? Because I mean, League is still still pretty new.
I really have no idea how long the individual people have been doing it, but League is not super young. League is not that much younger than when I started commentating. And before that, there were, it's not like they invented the genre. It's been around, so they could have been doing stuff. I mean, hopefully they'll get better. It's just that I'm saddened by the fact that I know that they can't do the stuff that I really want them to do because they're specifically asked not to by Riot.
Magus, you were at IPL 5. You saw some of those huge crowds for just the in-person portion of those events. Could you ever see yourself working an event like that? Going from Albert's Garage, where we did streams for 10 people live and 50 people watching, to something like that?
I mean, sure, it's not, it's not that much of a stretch when you do Evo or something to think about that. It's really similar, actually. And actually, Evo is bigger than a lot of those rooms. So, I don't know. It's all the same to me. Like, just sit me down, show me some good Marvel, man, and, hopefully magic will happen.
Hopefully magic will happen. James, is there ever an event that you watched from the sidelines, or maybe you weren't able to attend, something that you weren't a part of that later on that you really wish that you had commentated yourself?
I don't know. I'm thinking about that right now. I mean, there have definitely been a lot of times that I've just been at home being like a stream monster, and I'm just like, man, I wish I was there and I wish I could talk about this. But for the most part, I mean, the nice thing about it is that, honestly, I feel like the fighting game community is in really good hands. I mean, like, we've been giving so many shout outs to a lot of other commentators and such. We've mentioned a lot of these names, and honestly, I don't feel like for the most part, most of the big events and stuff, we have really great commentators in this community, and so I feel like we're covered pretty well. I don't feel like there's ever, I mean, outside of my own selfish reasons, I wish I could have commentated this because it just seemed like it would be fun. I just never really felt like, I wish I was there right now, because most of the time, like I said, it's covered very well.
I don't know. I gotta say, I feel like the fighting game community has a lot of garbage commentators. Lot.
I will agree with that.
A lot of dudes that just shouldn't be on a mic. A lot of dudes mic vulturing. A lot of dudes that come on and just say the most offensive shit. I mean, there's some terrible, terrible commentators in the FGC. And there's ones that are dudes trying to be straight about it, and they're just it's like a wall talking or something. But I don't get too down on most people just because of where I was when I started, and what I was doing and how I approached it, because I didn't give a fuck. And, it was, to me, it was like, just feed me talk hands and I'll talk. That's what it was.
We'll commentate for beer.
Yeah, just throw me the Modelos and we'll party. But so it's I don't get too down or care about it too much, but I do think people who step on a mic, they need to think about what they're doing and who it's who it's going to and what you're saying. I just wish people would realize that it's not just that it's kind of like a precious position when you're up talking to people. It's like a place of authority, and you shouldn't just throw it around and treat it like your little soapbox to tell jokes.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what I was getting at earlier. It's way harder than it initially appears. I mean, the only thing that I enjoy about people. I mean, one of the things that I always liked is when people find out how hard things are. So the key is, if they do go up there and they aren't good and they're bad, hopefully they can learn from that experience, and if it's something they're really interested in, to keep trying and just make sure they try to improve.
Yeah, but it's like when okay, Spooky's having a stream, right, and he's got 20,000 people watching, and Spooky's been busting his ass for years. He's putting all this work into his cam, all this money. This is one of the hardest working guys. The FGC in the East Coast is on his shoulders, and then you have some Mike Vulture step up, drop N-bombs, F-bombs, 1,000 viewers drop. The people in the chat are blowing him up. It's like, what is going on? Like, kick this dude off. And that happens on the West Coast a lot too. So it's just like, it's at the point where it's like, if you're going to get on that mic, you better respect the streamer, respect that microphone, and respect the viewers you're talking to, or you got no job being up there.
Yeah, but isn't it really like this? It's also the streamers or the stream team's job to like keep these dudes off.
Well,
right?
I
Like,
mean,
these guys don't know any better.
I want to play devil's advocate here.
You're
and
right.
say that, Magus and I commentated NCR7, and I got so drunk I gave myself alcohol poisoning, and I commentated a major that way.
Yeah, me too.
Like, and
Pretty
Hans,
admirable.
I
Hans
fell
was
asleep in a car that night.
right. Like Hans was sitting there looking at me, and like shaking his head every time that I would say something terrible, and it was plenty of times that day. But he still let me sit on that microphone, and he let it rock, and because Hans believed in what we were doing. I think you can't necessarily, like, Magus brings up a good point about guys who just pick up a mic and then start dropping N-bombs and stuff. You can't necessarily sit there and be like, well, wait for it. Maybe this guy will turn into a diamond in the rough down the road in 5 years. Like, there is, not everybody starts out great. I think most people who pick up a microphone have dreams of being like Yipes when they start, and they start just throwing shit out.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the other. Like, every time someone asks me about being a commentator, I always give them 3 pieces of advice. And one of the most important pieces of advice I always give people is be yourself. Don't try to imitate somebody else. I remember when I first started doing commentary, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to be like Yipes. I'm going to make these funny jokes. I'm going to like try to come up with like catchphrases and like make these funny comments. And it was pretty much a disaster. It was an utter disaster, and it just did not work at all. And so, what am I known for? I'm known for making really bad puns, right? I mean, you could talk to my friends that I've been friends with for years. They know I've been doing that forever. So honestly, with me doing it on stream, it's really just about me being myself. That's just what I do. I've always done it my whole entire life. So I've just kind of learned, you know what? Don't imitate somebody else. Be yourself and find your own style, I think
The
that's
only commentary that like really bothers me is commentary that's done by people who don't learn. Like it's the same thing with people who play games or who do anything in life, I guess. People who like could be good or maybe not, but they refuse to look at the situation critically and like think about how it went the last time they commentated and don't improve on it. One of the coolest things about Yipes is that he doesn't just come up with stuff in the moment. He actively thinks about things, and he will remember stuff to say for when commentary happens. Like that's I think the coolest thing about him is that even though like he has this like very entertainment heavy style of commentary, he still treats it as something that he like thinks critically about and tries to get better at. And if you're not doing that, that's what bothers me. If you just sit down for the first time and you suck, like it's no big deal to me. But if you sit down for the 10th time or for the 20th time and you suck, then it's just time to just quit it. Like, please get off.
Yeah, one of the things that, David has said before, I always talked about people having thick skins when you do this stuff. And, David has always said, just be aware that sometimes the harsh criticism, actually a lot of the times the harsh criticism, there's a lot of truth buried in there. And I've had a lot of people get mad at me for certain things, and when I thought about it, they were absolutely right, and I've definitely tried to fix, So you just can't let it make you want to stop doing what you're doing, but at the same time, you definitely got to pay attention enough to know that, yes, this is a problem, and I need to fix this.
Well, I mean, like, it's tough sometimes to take criticism from people who are saying that they're going to go to college so that they can get a degree in astrophysics so they can invent a time machine to go back in time and kill your mother before she gives birth to you. I mean, like...
But, like, at the end of that sentence, do they say, and by the way, you should have...
Right,
you have
like,
done
it's
this
there, right, but it's
I mean, whatever, like, you have to weed out...
Of course.
Whatever the stupid stuff is. Like, because I do really think that oftentimes when there is criticism... there's some reality in there. Like, people will dress it up to be funny or to be dicks. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
But you have to recognize that there's stuff in there. Like, I got ripped on forever for not knowing crap about Marvel. Guess what?
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about Marvel. So now for the last three or so months, I've really been playing the game, and I hope that the next time I commentate at a major, that people will notice that I actually have some information now. So like instead of like being like, whoa, whatever, man, I don't care. Like this is me. I would rather like put in some work and get better at it.
That was what I was gonna get at. Is usually when people say, how do you improve, the first thing I always say is do your research and learn as much as you can about the games you're going to commentate, because if you know your shit, people can't blow you up on that basis. And then it just becomes a thing of like, okay, I need to speak less, or I need to speak louder, or I need to look at the camera, or blah, blah, blah. And that's stuff you could work on. But you don't want to be exposed for lack of knowledge, because that's something you could, just do by yourself. But I'll share a pretty funny message I got about criticism and getting blown up. So the other day I was playing on Xbox Live, and this guy just blew me up like really bad. And he sends me a message, and he's like, I don't know what's worse, your Marvel play or your commentary, like followed by like a whole bunch of F-bombs. So that was pretty good. Yeah. Shout out to that guy.
I mean, it's tough, but I have to agree with David. I mean, like, I've taken, believe me, my fair share of getting blown up and harsh criticism. But I think like it's made me a better commentator. To anybody out there that is maybe a little apprehensive, you're gonna get blown up, but you have to take it and let it make you a better person, or just fucking quit. That's your two options: is use it to get better or quit. Like.
And it's kind of interesting too, because like, I mean, this even applies to people who play games. I mean, I don't follow this advice personally just because I hate my own voice. But like, if you actually go and, if you're a player, watch your matches again, see where your mistakes are. If you're a commentator, try watching some of the matches that you've done commentary before. I've listened to my own commentary before, and I cringe a lot of the times because I'm just like, I can't believe I said that, or like, oh my God, that was totally wrong information. And, you always have to remember too, though, that, one of the hardest things about doing commentary is sportscasters do this for like 2.5 hours or 3 hours, right? We're doing this for like 10 hours in one day. And so we're going to get tired. We're going to say wrong things. And I always kind of make the joke that within one weekend, by the time the weekend's done, if you've been doing commentary the whole weekend, you're going to have said at least one thing that has pissed off like 100% of the people watching. Something you say is going to make at some point, everyone's going to get mad at something you say. So, but definitely watch back again and try to make sure that, if something you hear yourself say makes you cringe, it probably you aren't the only one. So,
Ryan, all of us on the call tonight have done a set with this guy. Do you think that there is at any point that it will be possible for any of us to ever escape from the shadow of Seth?
Oh man, that's tough. Seth is just, the way that he breaks it down is just, I don't know, he has a very unique way of breaking it down. And, it's kind of like if you're doing commentary with Seth, it's like his show. You're just here. That's the way that I would approach it, right?
Magus, you worked with Seth quite a bit. He's actually from this area, so we both have had a chance to work with him quite a bit. What are your thoughts on working with Seth?
Well, Seth, I took a lot of the style that I commentate now from kind of the way he commentated. So, if anybody notices a little bit of kind of like the similarities, it's probably because, I really enjoyed what he did. So I kind of looked at it a little more critically than some other commentators out there, and a lot from boxing, because boxing commentators are my favorite. So those are kind of like my two influences with commentators. But I just think, he has a really, like a teacher is what it feels like, and he's a really educated person. So you kind of get that sense when you're listening to him that you're being taught, and you understand it, because he's very well equipped to break something down very simply. So when you're listening to him, it just feels like you're in a classroom, and you're listening to a good lecture or something, a really interesting lecture about something you're extremely interested about. And that's kind of like the vibe I get from him.
No, he was a professor before, so
Right, exactly.
So there you go. And that actually, you know what? Um, that kind of getting that experience there. I mean, you talked about like being able to look at the camera and all these other things like that. Those are a lot of like small things that a lot of people don't realize. And then also, if you're going to do commentary, taking public speaking classes and stuff like that, there's a lot of little subtle things that are super important, and having those extra kind of background definitely helps.
Yeah, practice makes perfect. I really think that we should be trying to advocate people doing commentary on YouTube, like on the either matches that are theirs, or doing commentary over tournament matches or something, rather than trying to like Mike Vulture and try to just jump on out of nowhere. Because if you're just doing it at home, you just practice and build yourself up.
Yeah.
David, we've gone from being a group of guys who showed up at the venue and grabbed a mic, and my personal motto used to be just fucking give me the mic and let me rock. But do you got some fashion advice for any would-be commentators out there that want to step in the booth? Guys who are trying to step up their stuff and maybe look a little bit more presentable on camera?
Well, can I just say that the reason that I started to wear a tie is not at all due to commentary. It's because I was starting my law practice and I didn't want to come off as being a slob on stream while I was trying to advertise the fact that I was an attorney.
I'm just trying to say you look handsome.
Guilty conscience.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. But if we're going to talk about fashion, obviously I'm not the right one in this call to talk to.
Well, no, you're a person, but like I said, I think everybody here has kind of stepped it up a little bit as far as their appearance goes.
I mean, for sure. Like after I started doing that, like definitely I noticed other people. So I almost kind of feel sorry that like that happened, because it wasn't my intention that everybody else thought that they would need to have a tie or like a suit jacket on or something. But yeah,
I think it's a good look. I mean, commentators have to come from a place of authority in any or other sort of televised sport or anything. Dudes are dressed like professionals.
Dude, if we're gonna talk about fashion, we need to turn the question to Andrew, man.
Yeah, man. I don't know why this guy's spoken up yet.
I was just letting you guys finish.
Oh, okay, all right.
You can't get a more
just waiting for the wise man to come in, huh?
Yeah.
No, I will say this.
All the fools can talk, then bring in the wise ones.
I will say this. When I started, I basically came on the mic looking like a drunk homeless bum. And now I feel like I'm just a homeless bum, so at least I'm not drunk anymore. But I would just say, if you're, obviously I condone people should be into fashion, period, because I think, the way you look is kind of like what you're putting out there for people, let's face it, in this world to judge you. So I just think, I love fashion. I love clothes. I've loved it since I was a little kid. Like, literally in like the 6th grade, I was like trying to find like my cousin's old band shirts and stuff and wear them. And, so it's just one of those things. But if you're going to get on a mic, and especially if it's going to be for a big event, you want to be dressed accordingly to who you're going to be working with. So, if you're going to sit on the mic next to a guy wearing a shirt and tie, and you're just wearing, a pair of sweats and in a game tee, that's not a good look. Like, you're going to look out of place, and the other guy's going to look more professional. And they, it's not going to come off in the commentary, obviously, because they might not see you all the time. But you just don't, you don't want to show up to a wedding looking like a slob. You come in with a nice shirt and a tie, and if you're going to be in front of a camera, at least try to look presentable. So it's just one of those things. I mean, not everybody needs to do it. And if it's a weekly and you're with your boys and you just get off work, like, nobody wants to throw on a nice shirt and stuff like that. So don't trip about it too much. But if you're going to go to one of your local majors and you want to sit on the mic, and if there's going to be guys like, dressed well on the mic, you may want to think about it.
Speaking of majors and speaking of local majors, you guys can catch David and James, you guys are coming up for NCR, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys can catch everyone on this call doing some commentary at NorCal Regionals 11, April 24th, 25th, and 26th. I think we're all going to be working together on some configuration. You'll probably You'll probably get some me and Magus, me and James, me and David, David and James, David and Magus.
Hopefully we
So-
get like a more hands-on approach to kind of like work out who commentates what too, because I know last year, like, you know, last year was great, but I know there was a lot of like WTFs, you know, like pairwise and game-wise. So I don't know, maybe we'll work something out.
Have I ever commentated with you, Derry?
Nope. And we are actually, I don't want to spoil it, but we are tentatively scheduled to commentate a high-profile top 8 together. So,
Ooh, awesome. Okay.
all right.
Don't fuck it up, Derry.
Oh, I will. Don't worry about it.
I'm
I
just
want to make
kidding,
James.
man.
I want to make James look. See, you know what? My greatest strength as a commentator is everyone who commentates with me comes away looking like $1 million fucking because I make them look like shit. I look terrible.
Some people make careers like that.
Exactly. Charles Barkley made a whole career out of doing that. You know,
exactly.
You know,
the Charles
I
Barkley of fighting game commentary.
Dude, I love the fact that you brought up Charles Barkley, because I've always said, you know, how David was mentioning how League of Legends, they're trying to be professional and Riot doesn't want them, you know, to do a lot of crazy stuff. I always just say, like, look at Inside the NBA on TNT. If you guys watch basketball, like, that's the perfect example of where the fighting game community needs to go with commentary, because they troll each other so hard on that thing, and they're still professional and they're funny, and, you know, it's great, and they haven't lost a lot of their flavor, you know what I mean? So
it's like James Toney and Roy Jones get on the mic too. Like they're like, James Toney to me is just, he's so great. Like I love listening to James Toney on the mic because he's obviously like a scientist about boxing, but he like cuts it up with his personality and stuff, and it's just amazing.
So I think there's plenty of ways to do the commentary, you know, and still be professional. You don't have to like cut out all of the fun stuff. So, you know, hopefully at some point Riot lets them do that.
I'm sure they will. I mean, like, I don't know. Hopefully. But anyway, you guys can catch everybody on this call doing commentary at NCR 11, 24th, 25th, and 26th of April. You can also catch various, I think, David, are you going to final round again this year?
Yes.
You can catch David at final round. James, are you going to be accompanying?
Yeah, I'm definitely trying my best to make it out there.
All right. Well, you guys can catch our work at various other tournaments throughout the year leading up to Evolution. But you'll be able to catch all of us together at NCR next month. Thank you again for tuning in. If you guys missed the early part of the show tonight, or if you want to catch up, you can do that via our YouTube channel at youtube.com/iplaywinner. Make sure you subscribe to the Twitch channel before you leave tonight at twitch.tv/iplaywinner. Thank you again to all of our panel tonight. Gutex, you can follow him on Twitter at twitter.com/Gutex. Thank you to first-time guests and a great conversationalist, Ultra David. You can follow on twitter.com/Ultra David. And James Chen, you can follow at twitter.com/JChensor. Of course, you can follow Andrew at twitter.com/Magus1234. And that is going to be it for this week, March the 7th, 2013. My name is Derry. Magus, take it away.
Yo, Fray!